everyone. Today we're talking about recent events right now as we're recording. What we're facing is the mass layoffs globally. I live here in Silicon Valley, so I'm definitely feeling it with FANG being headquarters over here in Silicon Valley. And I've also got Matt with me. Matt, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling over from Europe, actually, originally from London, England. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tough time at the moment, particularly in the tech world. Mass layoffs, thousands have gone at Meta and other kind of major tech players, but also you're seeing that in Europe as well. And so video and this session is really to give you some tips on how to find work if you have been laid off, but also if you have stayed in the organization, how do you deal with the layoffs around you? And so, hopefully this is going to be really practical advice for any of you in either of those situations.
Yeah, for all parties, as Matt was saying, there's anxiety, and I'm feeling it here too. Being as a coach here in Silicon Valley, I'm feeling that anxiety on both sides, those who are still within the company and those who have been laid off. So as you can see, these are the latest numbers. I just got them hot off the presses right here from layoffstracker.com. And you can see just in November alone, the number that spike right in layoffs. So that number in the black bar is the number of people being laid off. In last month, you can see already over 70,000 people, and that's just this first wave. So if you're feeling any anxiety, again, whether you're still within the company or you're part of the layoff, it's completely valid. Okay, any stress or any anxiety that you're feeling, especially right now when it's around the holiday time, it can be incrementally increase that stress. So it's all valid, all normal, all okay. That's very important that you recognize that. Giving yourself that grace and that permission to feel stressed, to feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Like this is a little bit like going through grief if you've ever lost someone who has meant a lot to you, and the pressure that you might be feeling, especially if you are the only breadwinner in the family and you have to support a large family, maybe not only your immediate family but also aging parents or anything like that. I've had some clients who are going through that, and that immense pressure that you might be feeling. And then on top of that, it's holiday time, and if you celebrate the holidays and if you're gift giving and you're thinking about your finances, it might just be a lot of noise, a lot of chaos, and a lot of pressure that you might be feeling. Again, whether you're in the job, you've lost half the team that you used to have, or you are one being laid off and now you're a bit panicked about finding a job. Check your mindset, check your emotions, check your feelings. Know that it's valid, whatever you're feeling, it's valid, and you've got support. You may feel like you're alone. I have been in that situation where I feel like I'm on a complete island by myself. You're not. Okay. You've got support. And we're going to show you some methods of how to find that.
Yeah, and on top of support, you also have to be realistic, right? In terms of your own specific situation. You might have lots of savings, you might have very little savings. You might be on an immigrant visa and need to find a job pretty quickly. Okay, so be realistic about your time scale, like your financial runway. And then from knowing that, the constraints you have, then you can start to plan appropriately, your job search. And it might mean that you need to do some compromises and maybe find temporary work, contract work, or even work that's not the perfect job, but it is a job aligned with your experience and also in a similar industry or similar projects that you've worked on before. If you have more runway, obviously you might have a little bit more flexibility and time to go into those more desirable jobs. So just be conscious of that. And then
And
finally,
Matt, what I've also found out from several of my clients after talking with them is they actually realize they have more runway than they think. Some of the clients who I've talked to who have been laid off, they actually have some pretty generous severance packages, or they're in the middle of negotiating their severance packages that will give them that runway. And we've talked about and we've planned it before, of course, individual unique situations with different clients, but we kind of map out exactly like how much runway one has given like the different responsibilities one has. So it's very prudent to map out that runway and see what you really have to work with.
mhm. Yeah, and then the third element is networking, and it's networking. It's a word that scares a lot of people, particularly if you're technical. But really what that means is building relationships. It's building relationships and cultivating your existing relationships within your organization. And also I'm going to talk in a minute about leaning into some of your previous companies as well, friends, family, but when you lean into your network, that's how you can find some of the closest job opportunities for referrals and actually to land work quickly. Connecting with previous colleagues is my best tip if you've just been laid off, because actually nowadays, and this is from a Harvard Business Review article from a study, 60% of people have found their next job from someone they had worked with in the past. So it really pays to build relationships with your former employees, especially if you've been laid off very recently, because that's one of the quickest ways to actually land work. Of course, there are other ways, weak ties, for example, people in your local neighborhood, just telling them that you've been laid off, that sometimes some of these connectors like, lawyers, real estate agents, etc., people that are very well connected, they often, when you share that information, they can provide job opportunities. But statistically, your best tip is to actually lean into your previous work colleagues.
Yeah, and that has worked for me too personally, is leaning on those whom I've worked with before, even like two employers before. I lean into that. And it doesn't mean that you're like you need a job immediately and you're desperate and you go out there and you do it, but even connecting with them just to warm up that networking call, especially if you're like me and you're an introvert. And a lot of the engineers and scientists whom I've worked with here, especially in Silicon Valley, where we're all kind of introverts. And so that initial networking can feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, but just start a quick message to say hello is totally fine. So feel comfortable with it, get yourself comfortable with it, and Matt and I can and definitely help with that.
Yeah, and so I'm going to talk about why you should network. What's the point of it? Well, 30% of the workforce is actually hired from referrals. And so it's like one of the number one sources for getting new candidates. This is from a JobVite planning guide report. And it's actually the fastest way to fill a job as well. On average, it takes about 29 days to fill a job from a referral versus 45 days if it's on, open job boards and career sites. So again, if you're looking for work fast, it's a really great way of doing that. And then finally, you've probably had recruitment from people that have been referred by other employees, by other colleagues of yours. And, 70% of employees feel that are a better fit for a company, better fit for their culture and their values. My final point, and this is really very powerful, statistically, you're 14 times more likely to land a job if you are a referral in a company. There's various reasons for that. You're tagged on applicant tracking systems if you're a referred candidate. It just makes things so much easier. So a small amount of investment in networking strategically, particularly if you're using, a coach that knows what they're doing with networking, it really goes a long way and maximizes your chances of landing that next role soon after layoff if you can.
Yeah, and I can validate that because I've worked internally with recruiters in the companies here that I've worked with in Silicon Valley, and it's true. The referrals are much easier internally as well. So if you can build those relationships and leverage the relationships that you already have to get those referrals, by all means do it.
Yeah, and there's a whole range of different strategies that you can lean into when it comes to finding opportunities. Job boards have really risen in prevalence. So filling three times as many jobs as 5 years ago. So you need to look at different strategies that play to your strengths, looking at the public market, the job boards, the recruiters, and the hidden market as well. And that's where, the right networking strategy, messaging, conducting conversations in the right way really, really does help. Even social media, engaging on social media by following companies, by engaging in posts. I don't mean just liking, I mean actually commenting as well. Those little things, they're very time efficient tips, but they get you noticed, and those can lead to conversations for interviews. Also things like, recruitment fairs, of course, virtual fairs are a really great way of networking with employees. So lots of different strategies. Use a balanced approach to maximize the opportunities you have in the market to get hired.
Thanks, Matt. And now, for those of you who are still within the company, no one says that you're feeling safe and everything is fine. I recognize, and I have talked to some of my clients who are still in the company, and they're feeling that anxiety too. Because what has happened, actually, I was just telling Matt that this past weekend I went out with a dear friend of mine, also an executive in a company, and they just went through their first wave of layoffs. So now he's got no one to do the work. His last person actually just left this past week. And so we were actually at a holiday party, and I have never seen him so stressed out. Matt, you should have seen him. He was like sweating at this holiday party, and he was just miserable. And I was like, are you sure we should be here? Are you sure we should be having this party? Because you don't look well. And he was telling me his situation. The thing is, having lost all of his team members, now all the work is on him. So yesterday was Sunday, he spent all day working globally because his team here was gone. So he had to put together the pitch deck, and he had to put together all the logistics and get the subject matter experts all together. I mean, he was burnt out. And Matt, you've seen this before too, I'm sure, in your work. Like, the burnout happens, and this one was just way abrupt. And so he was feeling that he's still quote unquote safe because he's still in the company, but now he's feeling more stressed than he ever was because he's lost his team. And so, however you're feeling, you're still there in the company, however much of your team is still there or not, whatever feelings that you're having are very valid as well. All of it is normal. The stress, the pressure, oh my goodness, I'm not going to have a holiday or a vacation or whatever because now I have to do twice or three times as much work. All of that is valid. Make sure you give yourself an outlet, whether that be being very direct with your supervisor. You can do that. I've had people do that. And if you have that kind of relationship with your direct supervisor, do it. If you are feeling like you need to just have some time out, by all means, take a Tuesday out and just breathe and just give yourself that grace and that period and that time. Allow yourself to just feel whatever you're feeling. Recognize that, hey, you know what? I might not have all of this together, and that's okay. All right. What I used to do is every time I get to that point where like it's on the brink of burnout, I start going to my mentors. So mentors from like 3, 4 companies ago whom I've kept a relationship with. So mentors are my go-tos. So check your mindset. And for your one-on-ones, if you're not doing it already, give time at the front end of your one-on-ones with your direct reports to just have free flow. Ask your direct report, how are you feeling? Like, be very honest. Give them that safe space. Okay. And if you're willing to do it, if you're willing to be transparent and vulnerable as well on how you're feeling, especially if you're feeling any stress, you're going to get more out of your direct reports because of that mutual respect of that hidden feeling of not just the work that needs to be done, but also just the human side of, look, it's the end of the year, end of the quarter, whatever it is, and I'm not feeling okay. Or, you know what? I can actually take on a little bit more of your work because I actually do feel okay. So whatever you're feeling and whatever you're going through, get some allies, get some support, get some mentors, and have an outlet. And give
Yeah.
your direct reports an outlet too. Matt, go ahead. Did you
Yeah,
want
no,
to add
I
to
was
that?
going to add, I was going to add to that in terms of, when you do reach out to mentors, because look, the reality is, even if your colleagues have been laid off and you haven't, there's an enormous pressure that you might be laid off as well in the coming months. That could be a market reality. And so the funny thing is that by leaning into your mentors and in previous colleagues and your support network, people love to help people. And if you're vulnerable and you're kind of sharing that you've gone through a lot of stress, etc., that is a relationship builder. And if the worst happens in a few months time where you join some of your colleagues who have been laid off, you've had those conversations, and your mentors have become aware of the situation at your organization. And so it just makes it much easier if that ever does happen later on to lean on them, because you've rekindled those relationships. So there's so many benefits of reaching out to your network, whether that's a mentor if you haven't been laid off, or whether that's a previous colleague if you have been laid off. But just building those relationships is key.
Yeah. Especially now, again, whatever your situation may be, if you're part of the layoff group or if you're still in networking, networking is that key. I actually had somebody at the very beginning of the layoff. So this was at the beginning of November. One of my connections on LinkedIn, they had gone through their first wave of layoffs, and she just posted out to the public. She's a HR director in a tech company, and she just posted the sympathy that she felt for these folks who have been laid off, and it feels kind of abrupt to some folks, and they're feeling that big loss that they're dealing with. And she just put herself out there and said, I'm here and I am willing to, for free, review anyone's resume, do any mock interviews, whatever you need. And this is to strangers, right? Because she's posting it for public use, and she just put herself out there. So if you're bold enough, those leaders who are still in companies, and you want to do, your heart is telling you to, that you want to do something kind and help those who are looking for a position, by all means, be a referral, post tips, repost articles that you see. If you have any events or webinars that are related, go ahead and send those invites out. Why not? If you feel like you want to have a helping hand, then go ahead and network that way. And also, whatever your colleagues tag with, they connect with you, and then you go ahead and respond to them. And that would be great. Something very little, not very time consuming at all. Matt and I, we've seen in our feeds, like, people like and make comments, like you were saying before, right? And that's a great way to network. And it's not much stress to do that, to make those little comments, right, on the different posts.
Yeah, and if you do offer help, that's going to be remembered in the future. It's the same as, if you're reaching out to previous work colleagues or mentors, but if actually someone has helped you in the past, how much more likely are those people going to help you when times might be tough for you? So it's about giving and receiving help, and just being compassionate is at this time is just so important for everyone.
Yeah, good point. So, in summary, 3 points for, again, all of those who are feeling the anxiety of this layoff that's happening. Check your mindset, check your emotions, see where your head is at. And then, as much as you can, get realistic data as far as your runway, your financial runway, what your network, what did you call them, Matt? Your networking groups that you have?
Yeah, so
Like,
there's
see all the
lots of
different
job search accountability groups, support groups, online. You can go on Facebook. There's some on LinkedIn as well. And so when there has been layoffs, there are, and particularly in tech now, there's going to be dedicated groups for, like, Meta employees that have been laid off. There's going to be dedicated groups for certain companies or certain industries, and you can join those groups and actually, kind of share in what you're going through with other people, book calls with them, message each other, and support each other, and find ways together and collaborate in order to help you move forward in your job search and your career.
Yeah, and you don't have to go directly and say, "Hey, do you have a job for me?" Right? Like, the find opportunities that we have here in the first point is what Matt just said, is just to put yourself out there and just start connecting. That, it sounds indirect, and it doesn't sound like it might be a hard set, get me a job thing, but those connections actually mean something. They will grow. Those seeds will grow. So trust me on that one. And also, Matt, I forgot to tell you before that I was just talking to a couple of clients, and they too, as a matter of fact, and they have been laid off. And as we were talking in the time that I spent with them on the call, at the end of it, they were realizing that the layoff is actually an opportunity for them, because they had worked for 4 or 5 years in this company and they had never taken holiday. And so they had a change of mindset, like, hey, maybe this is like the universe, or whatever it is, fate, telling me that maybe this is a good time to take a different track. They checked their runway. We checked the runway together, and they realized that, oh, their severance is actually carrying them through for several months out. So they're going to take that time to do a real, like, introspective reflection on where they at and what they want to do. So at the end of it, at the end of those calls, it was really an opportunity. Like, one engineer that I was talking to, he decided he may want to run a pizza shop. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, all right, why
That's a career
not?
change.
Right, right. So, if that's where you're at, we can talk about that too. So, we also talked about activating your network. So, first, check your mindset, then activating your network. Matt gave tons of strategies to do so, as well as in the post and all the social media opportunities that you have there. And then lastly, getting a coach. If you're still in the company, if you're a leader, you've been a leader for a while, be a mentor as well. Both Matt and I, we offer coaching in our respective arenas. Again, I work here mostly with tech folks, so your engineers, your application scientists, your R&D folks. So I have expertise a lot in that. Matt, your field is very much for those who are looking for jobs, resumes,
Exactly. Yeah.
LinkedIn profiles. Yeah.
So mainly mid to senior level tech engineering
Yeah, both of
professionals as
us.
well, but from the getting the job side. So and really, what I found when I speak to clients, particularly in tech, if they've taken a technical field, is they don't feel comfortable in networking or building relationships. You know, what do you say? How do you reach out to people? How do you conduct those conversations that's going to lead to getting referrals, for example? And so there's plenty of best practices. I have scripts, I have guidelines, and I actually help clients kind of tailor messages and prepare confidently in how to conduct these conversations so that you step by step move towards the employment and the dream companies that you want if you have the right strategy.
Yeah, and that's the real benefit of getting a coach because there's tons of videos and resources out there that are more generic. If I mean anyone can see them and watch them, but honing in on what your actual knowledge, skills, your abilities are, what your passions are, like if I hadn't sat down and talked with that engineer, I wouldn't have known that he had a dream of a pizza shop. I wouldn't have known that, right? And none of our videos and tips would have really gotten to that point. But it takes that coaching, those coaching sessions, and really asking the right questions. That's what coaches do to get you to where you really want to be at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I hope you found today's video of tips from me and Tram useful, and join us again for another video in the series of acing the employee cycle, where we're going to be talking about different ways that you can obtain and gain once you're in employment and then sustain employment in the employee cycle. So thanks for listening. Any final words from you, Tram?
No, I just reiterating this is what Matt and I do. I'm so glad that we've collaborated because Matt has so much expertise in obtaining that initial job again through getting through recruiters, what they're looking for, what hiring managers are looking for, and what they want to hear. And then my expertise is more in the gaining the position, the internal mobility, the promotions, and also the sustaining. Both of us were on like how do you sustain that job, maintain where you're at, and keep that passion and motivation going while you're within a job. And then when you're ready to make that next move, that level up, that's where my niche is from.
Awesome. So join us again soon.